I have a question for you. A simple question, but one that is imperative to understanding what it is I'm going to tell you today. Ready? Is an object defined by its intended purpose, or is a purpose defined by the object? Let's try an example. Everyone's used a fork before, right? You use it to eat all kinds of things. Eggs, chicken, broccoli for sure. But have you ever used it as a letter opener? Odds are you haven't, but I'm sure it would get the job done, right? So, is the fork to be forever defined by its intended purpose of aiding in the consumption of food? Or can the need to open a letter define the fork? As I'm sure you've put together by now, of course, a singular purpose can't define an object. There's an item for just about everything someone might need, after all. Would the need to open a letter not just define a letter opener? Semantics, I know, but it has a purpose. I need us to be on the same page, so I can ask you, if an object's intended purpose defines it, then what can you learn about something as a whole from the objects that make it up? Now that's the real question. The purpose of a door is to grant entrance, not to keep people out. That's what walls are for, not to protect you. That's what roofs are for, and not to observe through. That's what windows are for. So, if a house were to be lacking any of these integral pieces, what would that say about the whole? That it doesn't wish to be protected? That it doesn't wish to observe? Or in the case of a missing door, that it wishes not to be entered? My name is, well, I'm not too certain I'd like for my name to be out there on the internet. So you can call me Z for now. And there is a house in the middle of nowhere with no doors. I've recently been doing a lot of urban exploring. If I'm being honest, nothing about it appeals to me in the slightest. I feel it to be needlessly reckless and dangerous for a mild rush of adrenaline, but that's just my opinion. It's my friends who are helplessly addicted to it, acting like it's the newest drug on the street. They've done nothing but obsess over it ever since we turned 18, buying new gear and asking around for the best places. It's all rather pointless to me, but I've never found it in me to speak up or push back when they texted the group chat, letting me know where and when to be. It's just not in my nature to go against the grain, and I'd rather do anything than be at home. Ever since I was a kid, my parents have always made my decisions for me. The big ones, the little ones, who I could date, where I would eat, everything. And I never made a fuss despite the disdain for any conclusion they reached. I'd always held on to this vain hope that when I became an adult they would ease up, relax a bit, finally let me take the reins of my own life. But I was unfortunately so far from the truth it's almost laughable. First time I ever suggested a different choice than what my parents had instructed me to do, I was chewed out, cussed at, and they threatened to kick me out of the house, all over some damn ice. I didn't bother to argue again. It wasn't worth the stress, and it wasn't worth the disrespect. Instead, I began to distance myself, avoiding any conversation by not being present. Of course, that led to more troubles than I was prepared for, seeing as my distance only provoked them more. It became almost a daily occurrence for me to receive hateful texts from one of the two of them. Do you even love us anymore? It's a shame our own son hates this family. My malice grew to sadness, and sadness to depression. Finally, depression to indifference. I stopped coming home except to sleep. I was working towards moving out, but I wasn't ready to tell them that yet. Wasn't ready to be thrown out by my own family. Despite my absence, they still felt the need to control my every waking moment. They chose the college I was going to, despite me not wanting to go to any college. They chose where I was allowed to be and when, despite it not affecting them at all. They chose where I was allowed to work and with whom. It was also tiring. I didn't have the will to resist, to try and make my own decisions. I just let them toy with my life, and I was to suffer with the debt, with the job, with the life. Like I said earlier, going against the grain just wasn't in me. I received a text in the group chat with my friends early Saturday morning, before the sun even came up. Believe me, I'm not an early riser, but after 5 minutes of insistent buzzing from my phone, I groaned and decided to glance at it. One of my friends, let's call him X, had told us to meet him at his house in an hour, that he'd found a new place to explore, and this one was different. I'd heard this phrase before several times. Always used to hype up a location. This one's crazy. This one's completely different than anywhere I've ever been before. Or some reiteration of that. I always find the places to be more underwhelming when a notice like that is given. Despite the eye roll the text received, I didn't feel like hanging around at home. Didn't have the energy to protest, so I agreed and told them I'd be there. Before long, I had already gotten ready, driven over there, said my formalities, and was sitting in the car listening to the backstory of this house X had found. He said it was in the middle of nowhere, sitting in the middle of an empty field of grass, just sitting there waiting to be explored. He said it was a house, 2-story, with 2 windows and no doors. Honestly, I was at least slightly intrigued. I'll give him that. Until he decided to lean in on a ghost story. He claimed only 2 people had ever dared to enter the house with no doors. None of them had returned. It was a bunch of bullshit, but I remained hopeful for at least a moderately enjoyable day. The house was just as X described it, completely isolated in a field, empty as far as the eye could see. I found the condition of the home odd. Most places we explored were dilapidated and destroyed, but this house looked to be in pristine condition, like it'd never been subjected to the test of time. Besides the condition of the home, the only other oddity that set it apart as noteworthy was the missing door. Everything else was almost too normal. We stood around admiring the building for much longer than anticipated. It's hard to explain or put into words, but it had a kind of aroma to it. The kind that absolutely captivates you with no sign of release. But it also produced an immense amount of fear. I was so mesmerized by it, but so fearful. It was such a strange sensation. After several more moments spent admiring the structure, murmurs arose about whether we should enter or go back home. Whispers of the 2 that entered and never returned surfaced, and suddenly the whole group seemed to want to flee. However, teenage guys being teenage guys became a game of wits. Who was willing to go in and who wasn't. If you were the latter, you were ridiculed and mocked. So even though it was apparent no one wanted to enter, it swiftly became an argument over who was being a, and I quote, little bitch. Eventually, they dissolved into drawing sticks to see who would go first. Ze'll do it. Another of my friends, who I will be referring to as Y, called out that the stick he'd chosen came out as the shortest. This kind of stuff definitely doesn't scare him. There was no way in hell I was going in there alone. Yeah, come on, Z, the group murmured. I opened my mouth to argue, but soon found my lungs unwilling to give breath to my interjections. So I sighed and nodded. I didn't want to do it, but I also didn't want to argue. Funny how even when I'm outside of my parents' reach, I'm not even the one making my own decisions. I found myself smashing open one of the house's windows with my shoe before carefully climbing inside, especially wary of the broken glass. I turned back to see if anyone would follow, but X waved his hand and called after me. Check it out. Make sure it's not dangerous. I should have just left then. Turned around and said fuck that, but I didn't want to disappoint, so while scratching the back of my head, I took a deep breath and began to move around inside the house with no doors. The interior reminded me of an old suburban home. Polished wood floors, great big dining area, cream-colored walls, and a large staircase near the opposing window. I walked around for a second, noting how abandoned it felt. Despite the lack of any kind of aging, there was no spiderwebs, no graffiti, no disarray. It looked as if someone had still lived there, despite the odd location and dated interior. Despite the odd feeling I had in the depths of my stomach, I decided to check out the upstairs. That was when things began to take a turn for the, shall we say, bizarre. It was at this point that I noticed where the glass had spread from the broken window, there seemed to be black tentacles growing from them, stretching outward. However, as I kicked a few pieces to the side, it became clear the vines weren't growing from them. They were growing from under them, spreading out from where they had struck the floor. Strange. That was all I could remember muttering to myself. But despite the strange markings on the floor, I brushed them off and moved up the stairs. The second floor had a noticeable change in scenery. The floors were carpeted and the walls had a dark blue paint covering them. It was strange, but it was oddly similar to the layout of my own home. There was a single door at the end of the hallway, but I decided to turn around before I went too deep. And yes, I am man enough to admit I was a little scared. However, as I turned my back, looking over the railing, I could see the broken window. The black rot, if you will, had grown larger, indicating to me that it wasn't just some kind of burn mark from the previous owner. And not only that, everywhere I had walked, there seemed to be an outline of my footprint, in the same black growth that extended from the glass shards. "Fuck, it's time to leave," I mumbled, but a flash of light from behind me garnered my attention. The house was solely lit by 2 windows on the bottom floor, and the lights didn't work. I checked the switches, so to suffice it to say, it was a little dark upstairs. That was until a warm orange glow illuminated my back and the wall in front of me. I turned to see a light creeping out from underneath the door at the end of the hall. Well, I'm a little ashamed to say curiosity got the better of me. How in the hell was there a light coming from that room? And what the hell was in there? And well, you know what curiosity did to the cat, right? I opened the door and was completely stunned to find the room I was staring at was my own room. Not a similar looking room. Not a room with the same layout. I mean, it was my room. Down to the pack of chips I had for breakfast, stuffed into the trash. I stumbled into the room, in fearful amazement, searching through the contents of the room, my room, to see if there was even the slightest indication of forgery. But there was none. What the fuck? I sighed as I opened the door to the rest of my house. It was identical. I all but ran through the halls inspecting every room, trying to comprehend what the hell was happening. Grass. There was grass growing through the carpeted floors. It had only just become noticeable as I approached my parents' room, but glancing back I noticed that it had always been there, growing thicker as the door to my parents' room came closer. Prying the entrance open, I saw the room that was once my parents', now overtaken by growth. Grass lined the floor so thick I couldn't even see the carpet. Moss was growing on the walls, reaching towards the ceiling, which was growing leaves. The whole room was overtaken by nature, and their closet was wide open, almost begging me to enter and discover what lies just beyond my grasp. The second my foot touched the grassy floor, the same rot from downstairs crept out from underneath me and spread through the room like wildfire, killing everything it came into contact with in an instant. Fear flooded my system as dead leaves fell from the ceiling, and I was forced to once again ask myself, what the fuck is happening? This was the second point at which I must admit that I should have turned around. It was clear my presence was destroying this house with no doors, because I was never meant to enter. I was never meant to see what was hidden here. But the gentle breeze coming from the closet door urged me to come closer, to find out what was on the other side, and soon curiosity once overrode my fear. So far, something I hadn't quite accounted for was the perceived size of the house. From the outside, the first floor seemed to match perfectly with its container. Second floor? Well, tell me how my entire house fits inside what should have been a single bedroom at the top of the stairs. That was something that, in that moment, had completely slipped my mind. That was, until I crossed through the closet door. A field of grass as green as before spread out far past the limits of my view on the other side of the door. All logic and reason disappeared the moment I passed through the doorway. I grew from fearful to terrified at the situation I had found myself in. No amount of reasoning could explain where I was now. The rot followed me through the doorway, branching out from my feet like a spiderweb of death, shooting forth from me and onto the field to kill and destroy all that I had disturbed. A flash of guilt crept past my fear, begging me to stop moving forward, to stop destroying that which lived so peacefully undisturbed. That part of me finally won. The part of me that was reasonable. The part of me that knew what I was doing was wrong. The part of me that was scared. Then I heard it. It was the most horrifying, gruesome, disturbing sound I had ever heard before in my entire life. It sounded like a cross between a man wailing for help, a dog crying out in pain, a cat hissing in anger, a bird cawing in disgust. Almost every animal I could ever think of seemed to play a part in that sound. And then the ground began to shake. Just 50 yards away from me, the rot had ceased its movement, and at the edge of its grasp, the dirt began to rise. Something burst through the surface, tearing at the dirt and lashing out at the rot around it. Whatever that thing was, it was the source of this horrible screaming. I was completely frozen in fear, absolutely petrified in horror. And it only got worse as the thing lashed out at its own body as the rot crawled up it, eating away at parts of it. The scream got louder and louder as the thing's body seemed to decay, and then it turned to face me. The right leg was that of a human's. Its upper shin and calf were torn by the beast's claws in its self-destructive rage, while its knee and toes were consumed by the rot. The other leg appeared to be an elongated goat leg, a long, thick strand of black mold rising to its thigh, which was devastated by its own slashes. Its torso seemed to have once been that of a wolf. Its stomach and chest were the first to be ripped into by the beast and took the most damage from the rot, so that all that remained was the rib cage and entrails hanging out. Its right arm was completely consumed by the rot. All that remained was a single sharpened bone jutting out of the torso. Its left arm, however, seemed to be similar to a bird's. Many of the feathers were falling off. Its claws were chipping from the rapid strikes the beast delivered to itself. Finally, the head. Similar to the right arm, it was completely consumed by the rot, and all that remained was bone and the antlers above it. The skull of a deer had locked eyes with me. It ceased its insistent slashing at the growth and dropped to all fours, lifting off in a sprint towards me as the rot spread through its entire body slowly but surely. I was fucking terrified, but this time I could move, and I ran like the devil was behind me, and for all I knew, he was. Dashing through the closet door, I saw that my parents' bedroom was held together by a thin thread. Everything had turned black, and the roof was caving in. I ran into the hallway as the cries of that thing got closer. I heard a crash as I assumed it had entered the door, and rumbling indicated the roof finally fallen. I kept running through the kitchen, through the living room, and into my room, but it was gaining on me. Everything in the house was dying to the very same rot that had spread from my presence. Walls were losing color, lights were dimming, and the ground cried out after every step as if threatening to give way to my weight. I fell through the door of my bedroom and into the house. A creature crashed in another room behind me as I lifted off towards the stairs. I took a single step down the flight, and the ground gave way beneath me. I fell through the floor and into some kind of storage room under the stairs. The house was falling apart, and I had brought this here. I spread this rot by forcing myself into somewhere I had no business being, and I was going to die. I may have not made the decision, but I'd have to live with the consequences of my own death. The creature ran down the hall outside my bedroom and was rapidly approaching the stairs. The fear that I felt as death grew closer gave me enough strength to stand and open the door, exiting the storage closet, but not before the beast leapt down the cavity in the stairs and struck my leg. It was all but bone now. It was dying along with the house, and it hated me for bringing this destruction to its home, for the sole reason of curiosity. The beast's bird-like talons wrapped around my calf, ripping into muscle, tearing flesh, drawing blood, and snapping bone. It was pulling me closer. It wanted to kill me. I was going to die. In my fall from the stairs, I had knocked a cabinet over, spilling its contents out on the floor around me. Silverware. I lifted the closest item, a fork, and stabbed it into the beast's arm, tearing what little flesh remained. It screeched in agony and released my leg as the place I struck it sprang a well of that black rot and consumed it whole, turning bone into dust. The immediate danger had disappeared, but the collapse of the entire building threatened to do the same. I tried to stand, but my leg was beyond destroyed, so I crawled my way to the wall with the broken window and lifted myself up with all my strength, screaming for help. And with the help of my friends, I escaped just before the collapse. The house crumbled to dust in a matter of seconds, leaving absolutely no trace behind of ever having existed. I couldn't help but give in to the twitch of guilt under all that pain and fear, knowing I did that. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. Curiosity killed what laid within the house with no doors. It murdered that which was never mine to disturb. My friends berated me with questions, many of which I refused to answer, and others I tried to ignore, but above all else, I was insistent that we go to a hospital for my leg. I learned quite fast that they claimed to be unable to see the wound in my leg, despite the fact that I felt it in every way possible, and I could see it. They seemed unaware. Just to be safe, I made them drive me to the ER, where they found nothing wrong with me. I still feel it to this day. Like it just happened. It won't heal, and I don't think it ever will. I can't walk without a cane or crutches. It's the consequences of my actions. Even though I didn't choose on my own accord to enter that house, I live eternally with this scar. From that day on, I vowed to never let anyone else make a decision for me and expect me to live with the consequences. I stopped being a pushover with my friends. I finally had that talk with my parents, and although I had no friends or no home for a while, life is better now. I have new friends who respect my choices and a girlfriend who loves me for who I am. It hurt for a while, but I will never regret what I did, and it was all because of that damn house. I'd like to return to my original proposition of whether or not an object's predetermined intention defines what it is. I'm sure a fork was never conceived to be used as a weapon to fend off a creature straight out of hell, but it got the job done, didn't it? That's because it was never the object that defined the purpose, or the purpose that defined the object. It was the person who held it. They decide what to do with it. In the same sense, I viewed my life, always wondering if it was to be defined by my parents, predetermined wishes, or the whims of my friends and their adventures. But all this time, I was the one who held all the power. I determined what to do with my life, just as I determined what to do with that fork. You hold all the power.